see you again. Thanks for joining me for another video. You might notice a little bit of a different setup. I went out and got a new camera, so you'll be seeing me in 4K from now going on forward. And hopefully you appreciate the crispiness of the video, mainly my face here. And so looking forward to making many videos with this. And I also was able to rig up my podcast mic to be able to come at you with this great sounding quality as well. So anyway, just wanted to kind of mention that first. If you're new here, thank you for coming. If you haven't seen other video content that I've created so far, I've been on YouTube actually for quite a long time, but recently decided to kind of pivot to educate people about dwarfism and little people and that kind of thing. And I thought I'd take a second as well to essentially, while I'm talking about the equipment and things like that. By the way, link to the mic and the camera and all my setup and gear and all that stuff will be in the description below, so check that out. If you're curious about anything, let me know. But I wanted to kind of make a mention to say, while I plan on doing lots of different educational videos about dwarfism, my own life, that kind of thing, I also am a really big fan of technology. So you might see some, different tech here and there, and really love it when technology comes together with accessibility. So I'm going to try to make that a focus as well. So just keep your eye out, see what kind of content you guys like. Comment below if that intrigues you or if that turns you off. Let me know that as well. But anyway, I wanted to take the time today to answer some more questions that you guys have asked, and I have some right here. So I'm going to spend today's episode talking a little bit about growing up and what that was like and some of my school experiences. So somebody asked me, was there a moment that you realized you were different? And I thought about this question, and I'll be honest with you, most of the time growing up, and I think I've kind of iterated this in my other videos, I really didn't feel very much different than most of my peers. I was fortunate enough to have really awesome classmates and go to really great schools growing up. There was a moment in time where I started at a middle school here in Raleigh, and it was after transitioning from an elementary school that was really great, was kind of like a private school, and was also like next door to my house, so it was really convenient to get there. And I went to this middle school, and I felt like a fish out of water. And while I don't think that was the first time I necessarily felt different, if you will, I do feel like that was the first time my physical limitations preceded my ability to kind of blend into what my expectations were. And so after that first week, my parents took me out of that school, fortunately, and I was put into a private school, which was a lot smaller, both physically, like geographically speaking, the landscape of the school, but also the class sizes were a lot smaller. So it was a very good experience, a great transition. Met some friends along the way there that I still have today. So I went to that school for a couple of years and then transitioned to another private Christian school, actually, in the Raleigh area, and went there from 8th grade all the way through graduation. And then after that, I was a little bit more mature. Obviously, it was 7 years later, and I think my expectations were more appropriate, and I was able to decide on a college. I went to Campbell University, Go Camels. Yes, Camels. And if you are not familiar with Campbell University, it is a great school in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina. And pretty much all there is to do is go to class and go to sleep. And maybe for fun, you might do some homework. Just kidding. I met some great people there. But when I went there, that was obviously going to be a geographically larger location. And so with that being said, I started to use a scooter. At that point, it was actually a pretty baller scooter. It was one that I had been using around my neighborhood that my parents got me, and I want to say like maybe the year after I transitioned out of that middle school to help get me around and go to my friends' houses and things like that. But this thing was big and it was fast, and a lot of times people would say that I was about to run them over. I really got tired of that joke. If you're watching this and you went to college with me, and you feel that way, I'm sorry. I never hit anybody. I never ran anybody over. I'm actually a very good driver, both in my car and on my scooter. And to this day, I continue to use the scooter to get around large areas, and then when we travel and things like that. So it's not a complete necessity all the time, but it is when I'm in a larger area. I'm going to spend another video kind of talking about the nuances of my scooter, and I might even do a scooter review. Who knows? Pride, if you're listening, Pride Mobility, go ahead, reach out to me. My contact information is all over my page here. I want to say maybe that middle school moment, as far as I can remember, is when I really first felt different. But I appreciate the question. And this is piggybacking off of another question that I got. And it's really interesting and cool to see my channel growing. I appreciate you guys sharing the videos. I am trying to reach out to some of the people in the Little People community, and I was able to actually get this question from another fellow little person. And this person writes, I have dwarfism, and one stereotype that I get a lot is that your parents must be dwarves because you are. And I'm not going to go into the genetics of it because I don't have it in front of me and I know they're complicated, but that is definitely not true. You're certainly more likely to have it if your parents have it, but as I think I've mentioned in a previous video, dwarfism most of the time is actually a genetic mutation. My parents don't have dwarfism, nobody in my family has it, and in fact, I barely know anybody in my personal life that really does either. But I am biologically my parents' child, and you can still see facial features, on me that resemble my mom and my dad. So, I totally get the concept, if you're not familiar with dwarfism, of maybe that might be the case, but in most of the reality, it's not actually the case. And what I wanted to say about that is my parents always raised me to not feel different because they instilled that in me in an early age, and because I surrounded myself always, and maybe it was because I projected myself as not being different, as being outgoing, as being someone fun, and not seeing myself, not letting my stature be a thing in relationships. That is why I think I have a hard time answering that other question, is I didn't really feel different most of my life growing up, and I feel very fortunate to say that. I know not everybody who has dwarfism can say that, but I'm very happy to say that I am able to say that I had a really great childhood and very rarely felt different. One last question here for today's video. When you were at college and even high school, what was the biggest struggle or problem that you had? Whenever you're in a public place, particularly somewhere mandated with more people like college, but even something like a high school, you have to consider that at 4 foot height, being 4 foot tall, not everything is going to be made for you. And so, typically, things I would have to deal with were more like making sure that I had a desk that I could actually sit at. My hip and knee surgery that I had when I was younger, which I have talked about, which doesn't really allow me to bend down very far, also prevents me from sitting in tightly situated chairs and desks. And so, or like if I'm at a restaurant, I can't really sit at a booth. So I have to have some kind of a desk situation where I'm able to scoot out the chair that's like separated from whatever tabletop I'm sitting. Most of the time that was the case actually in high school. It ended up being really convenient. I went to high school in a hotel for 3 out of my 4 years. Actually, almost 3.5 out of my 4 years is an old hotel in Raleigh. Each part of the school, because it was a K through 12, elementary was on one floor, middle school was on another, high school was on another, and then faculty were on another. And so it had like an elevator and everything. It's kind of interesting. But that was actually kind of cool because a lot of things that you would consider for shorter people, because it was like used to be a hotel residential type of thing, didn't really have issues there. And then when we moved to modular trailers, didn't really have an issue there. But when I got to college, it was more about making sure that I could reach places like public eating areas. I often had to get help either from a friend or someone working there to kind of hand me different things if I was, eating at like a buffet style. Those were the days when you could eat at buffets. Hey, that rhymes. But anyway, so that is something that I remember. And then I lived on campus for a good chunk of my college career, and the dorm room obviously wasn't really made for me, and that was really hard. We really did a good job. I had a great roommate who ended up being and is a lifelong friend. Shout out to Mitch. And he's on the shorter end as well, so it actually kind of worked out pretty well. But we kind of accommodated the room the best we could, particularly different than a lot of different rooms that were there. And because we knew each other kind of before we roomed together and then became really good friends, fortunately he was able and willing to kind of work with me, and oftentimes the things I needed helped him too. So it ended up being not so big of a deal. But things like the bathroom, the sinks were high, so I had to use a stool. And obviously you can't change anything permanently in a place like that because it's not yours. And so those were the challenges, I would say, that I most dealt with. Nothing socially, nothing really academically. It's more about everyday life, things that you probably wouldn't even think of. So I have to say, once again, looking back, all my different schooling, I know this has been mostly about schooling, it was a really good experience. In fact, I was thinking earlier today that the last time I had a DSLR like this right here, it was, I got it as a graduation gift from graduating college. That was 10 years ago. And so I haven't had one in like 10 years because the iPhones have been so good. But, there comes a certain time where this is more appropriate, and I think, for doing video and things like that, it's going to be really good. And I hope you guys appreciate it and enjoy it, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Thanks. I'd like to